What are you avoiding? And more generally, what is avoidance itself? These are questions which I am pondering deeply today. And I'll be frank, these depths are driving me a little bit insane, particularly when my mind tries to cling to them. So I will speak from a place of passion and of heart and of deeply felt experience, rather than getting lost in the spiraling rabbit holes which are self-perpetuating and essentially void of the mind. Interestingly, whether it was from mind or passion, I figured out that avoidance means the creation of a void. Etymologically, it sounds like a void. And then in the actual Old French and Latin, it means to empty out, to hollow out. So that when we are avoiding something, we are essentially banishing it to the void, or attempting to do so. We are trying to negate its existence. We are trying to pretend like it does not exist. Now, one thing that came through earlier that reminds me of this is how we just put our trash in our garbage and then we put it out on the street, and then the garbage trucks come and pick it up and they take it to some magical dump somewhere that we pretend like it doesn't exist. And it piles up on and on and on and on, and it accumulates. Such that the earth is covered with piles of trash. And they exist. And simultaneously, when we avoid certain parts of ourselves, whatever they might be, I'll get into the question of what we avoid in a moment. It seems to me that we create voids within ourselves, like black holes, containing unfathomable weight within them. And I'm not necessarily just speaking metaphorically. I feel like there's a metaphysical phenomenon here. I don't want to say truth because I don't know if it's permanent. But it seems like there's an energetic process that comes from avoidance, wherein we essentially create these voids within the unintegrated pains which we refuse to confront within our bodies, and then these become weight. They become existential weights. They become our karmic pains. They become accumulations of trash into which we just keep throwing our piles of all the things that we wish did not exist, that we wish we could avoid, that we willfully will ourselves to blindness and ignorance about. And just like the trash that we put into the trash cans and that gets taken to the dump and it disappears from our experience, just because it disappears from our experience doesn't mean that it disappears from our experience. It just disappears from our field of vision and our field of awareness. But it accumulates. And it accumulates and it accumulates and it piles up. So that I was pondering my own avoidance patterns. And truly facing and feeling the depth of the patterns themselves as much as of the things which I've thrown into the voids which I have created within my own self with my will. Will being a creative element of our being. I grew up in technology. And I grew up developing a very deep, avoidant relationship with technology, where technology was my escape from the world, was my escape from lack of safety, was my escape from discomfort, was my escape from my pain, was my escape from the ancestral pain which I inherited from my parents and their ancestral streams, was my escape from the karmic pain and the existential pain of incarnating into a human body. It was my escape from samsara itself. And that's not the only form of avoidance. And ultimately it can be boiled down to something likely simpler, but food, pleasure, and from a young age pornography, which I've since renounced, but which has been quite a void to confront. And all of these consumptive ways and extractive ways of relating to the world and to reality itself. All for the sake of avoidance. To the extent that I'm realizing that it's not just pain. It's not just karma. It's not just my ancestral wounds that I'm avoiding, that I've been avoiding for so long. It is existence itself. It is presence. And not only that, but it's the responsibility that I carry as a being with free will, inheriting and choosing that presence. I chose to be here. I chose to incarnate into this reality. I chose all of the paths which I've walked. And I likely chose them before I ever incarnated. And now I'm discovering them. and alchemizing them into my path and my purpose. Stuff goes really, 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 really deep. And I'm still just scratching the surface. We'll see how deep I go. But let us say that there is, within this exploration of my avoidance patterns, a desire to avoid pain, to put pain into a void, and to fill that void with pleasure. Whereupon, I have learned throughout my life to distinguish between true pleasure, true pleasure and false pleasure. False pleasure is more like ephemeral pleasure, illusory pleasure, pleasure that doesn't actually last, that doesn't actually bring purposeful joy and lasting meaning. Whereas there is true pleasure, such as love, such as creation, such as connecting with nature, connecting with one another, kinship, prayer, reverence, devotion, celebration of life. Ceremony, ritual, things that are full of life and meaning and fire and spirit. Whereas so many pleasures, such as overindulgence in any of the temptations of this world, be it alcohol, pornography, chocolate, fast food, any kind of food, so many kinds of tasty food that could even be healthy that we overindulge in. I could name an endless list. And I can point to the ways in which civilization has been constructed around avoidance, which is the creation of a void, and then the creation of systems to fill that void and create a perpetual symbiotic loop, feedback loop of avoidance and emptiness, and filling the void with more void and void and void and trash, which inadvertently turns into physical plastic piling up in dumps, in our ocean, in the womb. The original void from which we came. I've often found myself in my life, and I still find myself, and I'm confronting this right now in my life, feeling purposeless, feeling like I don't know my purpose, feeling like my life lacks meaning, feeling like all there is pain. And in face of that weight, choosing to stay trapped in the void of my avoidance and filling it with false pleasure because of the difficulty and the pain that is required to enact an act of discipline and courage, to use my willpower and my free will and my sovereignty to embody my responsibility, and to choose to heal myself, and to choose to create my purpose, and to choose to act. To choose presence, to choose awareness, to choose integration. Integration etymologically means making whole. So, how do I weave this thread? I just want to re-emphasize this point, that there is the pain of the weight of existence itself. And it requires a confrontation of that pain in itself, as well as the pain of, like, it requires effort, it requires willpower to overcome that pain's weight and that pain's desire to drag you down, and all the temptations which will try to keep you stuck in that pain. Whereas there's this masculine essence, this transcendental willpower that can say, enough is enough. No longer will this pain drag me down into oblivion and void and non-being and self-negation and abdication of all my responsibility. I am going to take the weight of this pain and I'm going to create something out of it. I am going to create something from the void which I have culminated and cultivated within my being, and I'm going to create out of the nothingness that is. And that is a microcosmic instantiation of God's divine act of creation. Creatio ex nihilo. Creatio ex nihilo, Latin. Creation out of nothing. From nothing, God breathed this world into being. This is such a vast subject. It is with the breath that today I actually witnessed a lot of compulsive patterns of avoidance, which I've cultivated within my being for about 29 years. And with free will and prayer and breath being awareness, I sat with those compulsions themselves, like little tiny compulsions to just like, oh, I need to check Instagram, I need to check my YouTube, I need to check this, I need to check that, I need to check my email. These are little energetic patterns which have woven and coded a certain kind of mechanicity to my being within my body. And through my will and my prayer and my breath, I am able to confront these things and say, what's happening here? Why are these compulsions trying to guide me to avoid my own self, to avoid the fact that I exist, to avoid the responsibility which I carry as a creative being? Why? And why do I give them my will? Why do I feed them my willpower to feed the perpetual void of my own negation? Why? And interestingly, there's a bit of passion that just came out. And within that passion, there's a little bit of anger. And earlier, when I was truly in the depth of the pondering of these pains and these avoidance patterns and like breathing meditatively into my body, there wasn't anger there. That wants to go into my deepest wounds, which are like somatically felt within my body and within my heart, and be like, why are you like this? And shake them up. And like break them free. Like a monkey in a cage that's like, get me the fuck out of this prison. And wrathful and so angry that I am imposing the prison upon my own self. And on the other side, there's just like this part of me that just wants to collapse and cry and be like, why am I a victim to all of this? I didn't do this. God did this to me. God, did you do this to me? Why are you doing this to us? Parenthetically, before this video, I went swimming in the ocean, and the waves are wild today, and I just let them pummel me around, so to speak. And I have this piece of moldavite that I've been carrying for 6 months, and Mama Ocean was like, I'm taking this. You don't need this anymore. Moldavite is said to be a transformative stone. When you wear it, and I can confirm this has been happening, your life will fucking go crazy and your transformations will absolutely accelerate. And the womb of the ocean, Mother Earth, upon the ponderance of this avoidance and this pain and the question of my willpower's ability to transcend and transmute and create from the void of this pain, she's like, I'm taking this. You don't need this anymore. Someone else will find it. You have your willpower. You don't need some little stone to cast spells of greater and deeper transformation upon you. You just need your willpower and your prayer and your breath and your presence. I said I would speak from a place of passion, and here it is coming out. I was speaking of anger, and I was speaking of collapse, directed towards those parts of myself which have been stuck within the patterns of avoidance of my being. And while I was feeling that, and my feelings are valid, and they are an experience of my being which is communicating on behalf of the sacred intelligence of my body, there seems to be also some part of me that wants to recognize that if there is a void within me, a void of my avoidance, a void of pain, a void of the accumulation of all of the things, all of the ways in which I've deceived myself, so to speak, will the anger and the collapse and the shame and the guilt, will those, and the pattern of wanting to cast that into a void, to pretend like it's a part of me that doesn't exist, are these healthy ways to integrate, to make whole these parts of myself which are in pain into the fullness of my expanding being? anger, shame, guilt, collapse, avoidance? Are these actually going to serve themselves and the sources of their passion and their pain to heal? Or is it rather love, presence, softening, a surrender to the depth of all that needs to be communicated and expelled and shed into the light of awareness as opposed to suppression? When I ponder the question of avoidance, when I ponder the equally deep question of my pain, when I ponder the question of integration as it relates to pain and avoidance, I am guided to ponder the relationship of how presently, how lovingly, how compassionately, how respectfully, how honorably, how devotedly I create and curate relationships with these parts of my own self. And interestingly, it seems to be by diving into those depths, into the innermost darkness which those depths conceal, into the void of life herself, which we carry within ourselves, and that is a scary place, as much as it is a deeply loving place. But when we've been piling up all of the things which we've avoided for our entire life and beyond, for lifetimes and eons of inherited pain and delusion and deceit and misalignment and sin and wickedness and corruption, like these things, they still exist within us. And we have the free will, and we have the compassion, and we have Christ, and we have God, and we have Goddess, and we have the divine powers that be, all within us. To go with our breaths into these parts of ourselves. And to feel them. And to witness them. And ultimately to choose two things. How am I going to relate to this aspect of myself? And when the option presents itself, will I continue to hold on to this pain or to whatever it might be? Or will I choose with my free will to let it go? And to cry it out of my body. To cry the weight of that entire pain into tears of resurrective healing. To purify the waters and the aquifers of my perception. And to swim in the currents of the stepping into the responsibility which I carry with my will. And to step into the purpose that now has the space to breathe and to be embodied into apotheosis and becoming. Which is where I ask you again. What are you avoiding? What are you avoiding? And do you want to continue avoiding it? Do you want to continue casting it into a void and perpetuating that void? Or do you want to let it go? Do you want to heal it? Do you want to step into the purpose which it has prevented you from embodying for so long? I ask these questions to you as much as I do to myself. And I can tell you that my soul and my heart and my will, they know the answer. But I can't give you an answer for your own self. And I cannot embody an answer for you. Your own answer is in your own hands. And that is what will guide you to your purpose. That's it.